Varanasi is one of the holiest places in India for Hindus, Buddhists and Jains. Often referred to as the country's spiritual capital, the city is lined with temples. Located as it is on the banks of the holy Ganges River, Varanasi has attracted pilgrims and tourists for centuries. Hello and welcome to this edition of India Votes 2024. I'm Hannah Joes, and we're bringing you this episode today from the heart of one of India's ancient cities, Varanasi. For a decade, Varanasi has been the parliamentary constituency of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and throughout his tenure, the city has undergone a remarkable transformation. Mr. Modi is gunning for his third term as Prime Minister. So what do people think and feel as he contests from here once again? Let's find out. In 2014, when the stage was set for Narendra Modi to step into the national spotlight, he strategically chose Varanasi as his constituency. Modi, who had been Chief Minister of Gujarat for over a decade, stepped out of his comfort zone for the national contest. Varanasi is situated in the state of Uttar Pradesh, which holds significant political sway as it sends the largest contingent of legislators to parliament. In Indian politics, Uttar Pradesh is one of the most pivotal states. Political experts say those who win Uttar Pradesh win the government.
Starting with the state of Uttar Pradesh, because remember, generally it's believed all roads to Delhi lead through Lucknow. That certainly to some extent has been the case in 2014 and 19, given the domination that the BJP has had in the Hindi heartland.
On his debut in Uttar Pradesh, Narendra Modi won by a staggering 337,000 votes in 2014. Returning for a second term in 2019, he got an even bigger win, triumphing by nearly 500,000 voters. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is gearing up to contest elections once more, marking his third consecutive bid from this historic city as he vies for a historic third term as the nation's leader.
13,000 करोड़ रुपए से अधिक की विकास परियोजनाओं का शिलान्यास और लोकार्पण किया गया है.
And the transformation has been welcomed by most.
Oh, he's very popular. As I can see after the BJP coming into power and after joining Banaras Hindu University, when I speak to the students, I see that they are all emotionally charged up when there is a name comes up, which is Prime Minister Modi. I remember when I was doing my undergrad at the university, we were always thinking that we need to go to metro cities to find jobs and everything. Now the youngsters are looking up to the government that we don't have to go to the metro cities.
The people of Bhagwanpur, a small urban village nestled in the middle of the city, have slowly seen improvements. But a critical issue remains.
पानी की समस्या बहुत ज़्यादा है. सभी लोग कुआं पर काफ़ी सालों से हैं ये तो, और ये चापाकल भी लगा है तो वो भी बेकार है.
Despite that, there is no doubt who they'll vote for.
गैस मिला है, घर मिला है, लाइन मिला है, सब कुछ है. हाँ, बस यही पानी का हम लोग को ज़्यादा परेशानी है.
तो आपको क्या लगता है चुनाव में कौन जीतने वाला है?
मोदी जी जीतेंगे. मोदी जी सब कुछ दिए हैं तो मोदी जी जीतेंगे.
तो मोदी जीतेंगे.
हाँ.
But it's not just infrastructure on people's minds. Recent events have left many in the community uneasy. Muslims account for 19% of Uttar Pradesh's population. So for more than 38 million, this state is home. In Varanasi, close to 30% of residents are Muslims. And the city is dotted with shrines and mosques. The Kashi Vishwanath temple and the Gyanvyapi mosque are located right next to each other in the heart of Varanasi. Today, that mosque has become a bone of contention between Hindus and Muslims. Behind me here, behind the police barricades, are both the Gyanvyapi mosque and the Kashi Vishwanath temple. The Hindu community believes that the mosque was built on the destroyed remains of part of the temple back in the 16th century under a Muslim emperor. The matter was taken to court, and last year a local court ordered an official survey. The Archaeological Survey of India told the court a Hindu temple did exist there before the mosque was built. After this, the local court ordered the district administration to perform Hindu prayers inside the mosque.
The Kashi Vishwanath temple complex and the Gyanvyapi mosque. Now this area is in the headlines.
A day after the court order, worship begins at the Gyanvyapi mosque basement. The Varanasi court gave 7 days to get the ritual started, but less than 24 hours later, the top official says we've complied with the order.
This is S.M. Yassin, the Joint Secretary of Anjuman Intizamiya Masjid Committee, an official body which controls the affairs of Gyanvyapi and many other mosques. He says the community stands against the order.
जाहिर है बहुत डिसअपॉइंटेड थे जब जिस चीज़ की मांग नहीं थी उसका ऑर्डर किया गया था। हम उस रात भी भागे गए सुप्रीम कोर्ट कि चलो वहाँ से शायद इंसाफ मिलेगा। देखिए बहुत दिनों से हम देखते आ रहे हैं जुडिशरी का रोल हमारे साथ फेयर नहीं है। हम महसूस कर रहे हैं कि हमें हमारे साथ जजमेंट तो हो रहे हैं लेकिन इंसाफ नहीं हो रहा है। वो तो मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी तो सोच रही है कि भाई ये हमारे साथ नाइंसाफ़ी हो रही है और बहुत मायूसी है, बहुत मायूसी है। डरे नहीं है, जो होगा देखा जाएगा। दे दो इसको दे दो, कई लोगों का हमारे पास वो आया कि इसको दे दो। क्यों दे दे भाई? 600 साल से हम नमाज पढ़ते आ रहे हैं, हम कैसे दें? तुम्हारे पास ताकत है तुम छीन लो, छीन तो रही हो तुम हमसे। 2014 से पहले बहुत अमन था। 2014 के बाद से ये सारे हालात बदले और खराब से खराब होते जा रहे हैं। सब खराब से खराब होते जा रहे हैं।
There are fears the issue is heading in the direction of what happened in Ayodhya in India, where a Mughal-era mosque was torn down and a temple was built in its place. Backed by a similar survey and after an order from the country's highest court, Mr. Modi recently inaugurated the Ram temple in Ayodhya. Vishwambar Nath Mishra is the religious head of Varanasi's second most visited temple, the Sankat Mochan. He says the dispute is detrimental to the city, to the communities living here, and to social unity.
स्पिरिचुअल स्पेस है और यहाँ पे हर धर्म और इसको हम लोग कहते हैं कि प्रोटोटाइप मॉडल ऑफ इंडिया, यहाँ पे हर स्टेट का पार्टिसिपेशन है, हर धर्म का पार्टिसिपेशन है और सब यहाँ बड़े एमिनिटी बहुत हारमोनी के साथ रहते हैं आपस में। इसको कहा जाता है कि बनारस हैज़ गॉट ए वेरी यूनिक फैब्रिक। अब यूनिक फैब्रिक है यही है कि यहाँ सारे धर्मों के लोग एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे ऑपरेट करते हैं और सब एक दूसरे को बढ़ाते हैं।
He says the government is purely playing politics.
ये सब चीज़ें जो है ये पॉलिटिक्स को चलती ये सब हो रही है और जब चुनाव आता है किस तरह के इश्यूज से रेकअप करते हैं और ये देखिए ये एंडलेस अफेयर है, इसका कभी कोई अंत नहीं होगा। तो इसको आपस में ये सौहार्दपूर्ण ढंग से आपस में हिंदू मुसलमान बैठ के आपस में इसको डायलॉग करके इसको रिजॉल्व करें, ये ज़्यादा अच्छा अप्रोच होगा। और ये अगर आप फैब्रिक को स्ट्रेन करके और फैब्रिक फट जाएगा तो
It's a contentious issue that not too many are willing to speak about openly. But it remains to be seen whether these kinds of sentiments will affect the results of the polls on June 1st.
I don't think there is any impact on the communities. There is a discourse, there's a discussion, which is always supposed to be there.
The Prime Minister made it very clear that he has already planned the agenda of his third term.
Don't sit here and lecture us. Don't sit here and lecture us, Mr. McAdams. We shut him down.
I'm not talking. It's the other guy who's talking. I haven't been able to say a word.
Screaming matches and a nationalistic fervour have become the norm on primetime Indian news. Anchors and journalists are often seen openly batting for the government.
In the process of trying to block Narendra Modi, they shall become speed breakers in the story of India's national growth.
And abusing the opposition.
Deep within, if you look at the words of Rahul Gandhi, he's sounding like what he is. He's an entitled 55-year-old brat who has not done anything in his life by merit. but only by birth.
And for his part, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has never really given a press conference to Indian media. But there have been several interviews given to a chosen few.
हमारे प्रधानमंत्री आम खाते
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के लिए खुशी का मतलब क्या है?
अगर आपके चेहरे पर खुशी देखो, मेरे मन को खुशी होती है। खास करके किसी गरीब के चेहरे पर खुशी देखो।
Meanwhile, publications that report unfavorably on the government have faced pressure. News Laundry is a digital publication that has come under such scrutiny.
In the last 2 or 3 years, I stopped counting. We've got about between 55 and 60 income tax notices. We've had 2 raids, which they call surveys. I've had my phone and laptop taken away, which in my understanding is actually against the law. And there has been a case against me where the income tax wanted to proceed against me with criminal proceedings, which they were denied because you have to have some sort of evidence, however sketchy it may be. But it goes on, they've appealed.
The Indian media environment wasn't always like this though.
There was a time when they were reporting without fear, without any kind of a constraint. Now, from different means or from different sources, they get a sense, they get a message that no, this cannot go in print or this cannot be aired.
Sanjay Kumar is the co-director of Lokniti, a research program at the Centre for the Study of Developing Societies.
All of them believe or get a sense or experience that the house in which they are working, the media house, whether it is print, electronic, there is a tendency to favor the ruling party. I don't think this is unusual in the Indian context. Whenever there is a party which is in the government, you would tend to have a section of media supporting the ruling party and a section of media who would be very, very critical of the ruling party. But I think the difference in present day times is that a very large proportion of media is in support of the ruling party and a very tiny section of the media is openly criticizing. The level of trust in the media has come down because generally there is a shared sense that large number of media houses have started supporting or tilting their stories in favor of the ruling party.
A recent study by this organization found that 82% of journalists felt their employers supported the ruling BJP government. Publications that have done stories critical of India's leadership, like the BBC, recently saw their offices raided on charges of tax evasion or money laundering. One of the country's most popular news channels that reported critically on the government, NDTV, had its founders raided for bank fraud.
Teams from the Central Bureau of Investigation raided the residence of NDTV promoters Pranoy and Radhika Roy in New Delhi's Greater Kailash colony this morning.
In a statement, NDTV has alleged that the CBI raids are a witch hunt based on false allegations.
And behind the scenes, there's been a reordering. Billionaires believed to be close to the Prime Minister, like Gautam Adani and Mukesh Ambani, have either increased their stakes or bought over news organizations in recent years. And in this churn, many popular journalists have chosen to quit.
और आज उसे छोड़ रहा है, इस्तीफा दे रहा है.
Nidhi Razdan was the executive editor of NDTV and a mainstay on Indian TV screens for over 20 years.
2024 campaign.
She resigned just last year, soon after Adani bought a majority stake in the network.
Suffice to say, I think it's pretty obvious why I left. I think we wanted to give it a fair shot to see if all the promises that were made about keeping the editorial independence of NDTV intact would actually happen. And it was pretty clear to us within the first few days of the takeover that would not be the case. I actually am teaching at a university in Delhi. I'm heading the School of Communications there. I'm also writing 2 columns a week, political columns. But a lot of my colleagues who have left, they've started their own YouTube. Ravish Kumar is, of course, hugely popular on YouTube right now.
Many have now made the switch to YouTube, launching their own channels on a platform where there's far more freedom. Akash Banerjee used to work at mainstream TV channels. Today, he's one of the most watched YouTubers in the country.
The whole concept of satire and taking news in a funny way really appealed to me. And one knows that you can't do it in Indian television. YouTube suddenly seemed a good opportunity at that point of time.
And in this digital space too, changes are in the pipeline. The government is now pushing forward 3 laws to regulate digital media. So where does that leave creators like Akash?
One specific law allows the government now to decide who is right, who is wrong, who's factual, who's not. The government of India will have its own fact-checking unit. which is unprecedented actually in a democracy, that the government will decide if a certain fact that is being talked about is factual or not. And the new broadcast regulation bills, very simple, one very basic fact. So tomorrow somebody does not like an episode that we do at the Deshbhakt, the person will raise a complaint and say that I am not happy with you. And I am duty bound to then answer to that person within 24 hours. And with the new broadcast regulation bill, you'll see digital content creators being controlled in a much more brutal manner in the days to come. I do not think I am aware of any democratic country where YouTubers are subject to government regulation. And the present day laws are good enough. It's not like YouTubers haven't been shut down on national security grounds, on law and order grounds. The government has already got the right to pull down YouTubers. But then to go ahead and bury them in paperwork, to bury them in permissions, is obviously to send a chilling message down that, listen, control your talk, be respectful, don't ask too many questions, otherwise we can come after you. The message always from any government has been, we can come after you, watch it.
Dhanya Rajendran is the editor-in-chief of the digital news platform, The News Minute. She's grappling with the same issues as Akash.
So the BJP-led government of India has had a problem with the digital media space, especially the English digital media space. It is more or less really independent and it keeps asking tough questions to the government. So initially, a few years ago, the government very ingeniously said that we are going to bring digital media rules to take on two problems. One is of fake news and second is of child pornography. Now, when you say there is a lot of child pornography or child sexual abuse material on the internet and we want to bring a law in, who would oppose it, right? That's the first excuse given by the government to bring in the digital media law. I'm actually the first litigant along with The Wire. We were the first two people who went to court against the law. And then there was a stay which was given by two courts in India. I think it is because of the stay that the government is now trying to bring the broadcast bill.
As the BJP presses ahead with changes to media laws, India has been slipping in the World Press Freedom Index rankings in the past decade. For many in the industry, it's clear there has been a shift.
I really don't think that you need any press freedom rankings to tell you that the state of the media is not good. And the reason for that is that a large section of the mainstream media in this country no longer holds power to account.
The industry is growing. There are more channels, more news shows, more online creators covering the news than ever before. R. Jagannathan has been in the news industry for decades. He now runs Swaraja magazine, an outlet that bills itself as right of centre.
I think it is far more aggressive and partisan, definitely. There has been a gradual sense of rediscovery of our civilizational heritage, which means that people are a lot more sensitive to what is being said about India, because they believe that indirectly you're saying the same thing about Hindus and not India. After the BJP came to power, the Western media is a lot more hostile to the government itself, in a more fundamental sense against the 80% of the people who happen to be Hindus.
And yet, in sections of Indian media, there has been a sense of loss.
I was safer as a journalist then than compared to what I am now. Definitely, the challenges have increased, the threats have increased. Today, there's more threat of litigation, of online harassment, of government censorship and all that. There were threats back then too. It's not like it was not there. It has increased, but somehow I want to be that eternal optimist.
You have to punch up. That is the whole point of journalism, not satirist. That is the point of journalism, to punch up. I think that art has been forgotten somewhere.
I never imagined a day where I would leave like this, or that the organization would, change in this way. But I do see hope in those YouTube platforms that we talked about, especially the digital media. I see hope in them because they're still doing good journalism.
It was Modi Mania when the Indian Prime Minister came to Australia.
Well, it was a rockstar welcome for Indian PM Narendra Modi as he took to the stage at Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney alongside Anthony Albanese.
Modi Airways, a specially chartered Qantas 737,
flying the faithful from Melbourne to Sydney to see their PM give a speech at Homebush this evening.
But improving the living standards in a country of 1.3 billion people has given Narendra Modi cult status.
Last year, 20,000 people filled the Sydney arena to hear from the leader of the world's biggest democracy.
साथियों, आप सभी यहाँ ऑस्ट्रेलिया में हैं, यहाँ के विकास को देख रहे हैं। आप सभी का एक सपना रहा है कि हमारा भारत भी विकसित राष्ट्र बने।
Last time I saw someone on the stage here was Bruce Springsteen, and he didn't get the welcome that Prime Minister Modi has got. Prime Minister Modi is the boss.
From Australia to the Pacific, from the US to the Middle East, there's never quite been an Indian leader who has drawn the massive crowds like Narendra Modi has overseas.
All of this fanfare has been made possible thanks to the Indian diaspora that's spread across the globe. In fact, it is the world's biggest diaspora, with the Indian government estimating the size to be around 32 million. But what's different about Narendra Modi, and why does he get rock-star receptions? To find out, I paid a visit to Rakesh and Monica Raizada, who live in Melbourne's western suburbs. Hello, Girish from ABC. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Namaste. Namaste, Monica. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
They've lived in Australia for 25 years and are proud of their Indian heritage. They are equally proud that Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of their birth country and strongly believe Modi has played an important role in India's rise on the global stage.
Who could think or imagine 20 years back, 15 years back, that even poor people could have a bank account, they could have a health insurance, things like that.
He has become popular by doing things, by getting things done for the poorest to the richest, from simple things like how to improve the soil to reaching the moon. I think he has done so many works everywhere that his popularity, he has earned that popularity.
In fact, Rakesh was on that very Modi Airways flight last year when the Prime Minister was heading to Sydney.
It was electric. It was inspiring to see when Modi walks and talks. When Modi walks like a tiger, like he is confident person coming out who has command, who has got vision, who has got to look after the entire largest country in the world population-wise.
It's a sentiment echoed by many in the diaspora.
Members of the Indian diaspora, many of them feel that if India is doing well, their own self-esteem goes up. They feel better about themselves. That India is no longer the land of snake charmers and slumdog millionaires.
Professor Pradeep Taneja says Modi's popularity overseas has been used to his advantage.
Diaspora is part of the narrative that India is shining, that India's status, global standing is growing, that India is now respected by the world. That's part of particularly the BJP narrative, the current government's narrative. And having the support of the diaspora, during the election campaigns becomes important to that extent, that they support the narrative. Prime Minister Modi has, since he came to office, he has really made Indian diaspora part of his foreign policy. So, for example, he has described the Indian diaspora as India's brand ambassadors.
But he warns that India's diaspora is just as politically diverse as the electorate in India, and Narendra Modi may not be everyone's cup of tea.
There's a large section of the diaspora which is a strong supporter of Prime Minister Modi and the BJP currently. But there are also those who are very critical of Prime Minister Modi and the BJP. So the diaspora is not a monolithic entity. We do have a great deal of diversity in the Indian diaspora. As it should be, because diaspora doesn't agree on everything.
Melbourne-based stand-up comedian Ateev is one of them.
धर्म खतरे में है। पीछे ट्रंप ने
Like many in the Indian diaspora, Ateev is proud of his Indian heritage. In fact, his grandfather was a freedom fighter who once went to jail with Mahatma Gandhi, but he's no fan of Mr. Modi.
What is happening is nothing beyond majoritarianism, and I understand you want to take over, but I think that whole narrative that one particular religion is in danger and is going to take over has divided it more than it ever could.
He says those divisions are also visible in the diaspora here in Australia. He shares how he was targeted after performing a stand-up routine that made fun of India's Prime Minister, even when he didn't specifically name Narendra Modi.
I got heaps of abuses, so much I had to go silent on social media for 3 months. They're like, how dare you, you're abusing our Prime Minister? I was like, I did not even name which Prime Minister. I just said Prime Minister.
So whatever the outcome of a general election that's taking place thousands of kilometers away, the Indian diaspora is closely watching every political move.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of India Votes 2024. Thank you for writing in. We love reading your emails. Now join me again next week as we delve into how India's religious minorities are voting. And we'll bring you insights from Kashmir and how much it's changed since the last election. And finally, why India's queer community is now seen as a powerful voting bloc. I'm Hannah Joes. It's been great having your company. See you again next week. Namaste.